It is a very interesting time to be in, to be an anime fan. Any polite acquisition, acquiring EDG firm is very interesting considering this. Any polite is owned by Sony, so but therefore Sony now owns all of these properties for the most part, and a lot of people are rightfully upset, which I can't even blame them because they have been getting a stranglehold on anime slowly but surely. I wouldn't say they're a monopoly by any means. I would not say that, not yet. But they're certainly going to work up their way to it. When you have something like Aniplex, which is again owned by Sony, where you have this massive list, and this was before the EDG firm acquisition, like Sony, they're really starting to get their groove with animation. They're really starting to see the potential of it, and they seem to want to acquire as much as possible. And just it's just very interesting to see how it's all going to develop because a lot of people are very negative with the acquisition like this because EGG Sperm they own a lot. They own a lot of good animation. They own a lot of good content. Like the fact that like they own like Bashoku Tensei and all these different factors, Damachi, and it's just so crazy to see how not even a week ago that this guy was saying that more studios are going to be like Mappa and partner with other companies. Now, granted, this acquisition what took have been happening over the course of months, and we're just now knowing it. But it's just so interesting how it's only February, and the fact that we are seeing even more studios partnering up with these companies. I do think it could potentially bode a rough time for animators and for us, the fan base, seeing a potential changes to the animation, potential censorship, and that is a little bit scary. But at the same time, I do think this was inevitable because these production committees they don't necessarily have the best interest for the animators or us really for the most part because we have something like a One Punch Man or No Game Life, where you could clearly tell they're just trying to rush it out. They're clearly just in it for the money. They don't really care about the artistry of animation. That I think that like animators are actually starting to get annoyed because you have seen so many horror stories about the studio getting closed because their money just being drained. Like they don't have the money to support themselves. Like it's very sad, and I think like some of these people feel like they're forced to work with this big company, which it doesn't really seem like there was any other way past this, like which is unfortunate to say, but like even though like this guy says, animation has grown to be so significantly big, it has grown to such a significant scale, and the fact that the animators are still struggling despite all of that, the fact that animation studios are still closing down, the fact that it's almost up to 55%, the fact that the streaming services have boosted animation to an unreal level, and we're still into this predicament. I think that really does suck. I think that genuinely does suck. I actually do feel bad for the animation studio because, like I said, it is very hard to start an animation, obviously, and there are very few companies that could self-publish themselves. Like there are very few companies that can do that, like Mappa. Mappa, they've been by themselves for a long time. They haven't really needed a production company. It was only until recently that they partnered with Netflix. But besides that, they kind of just been solo for the most part, which is kind of crazy to me that Mappa have been supporting themselves for this long. But it seems like they feel like they have to partner with Netflix so they won't have to worry on their budget. And for something like this, the EDD Sperm acquisition, it does have me a little bit worried, but I think it could potentially be a good thing because EDD Sperm does have a lot of good animation. They do have a lot of good shows, and if the acquisition, if any collect could actually push them in the right direction, and actually give them more breathing room, provided this is the optimistic look, if they could actually help them like change course and push them to a brighter tomorrow. I think that could potentially happen. But this is Aniplex we're talking about here. This is Sony we're talking about here. This is like Crunchyroll we're talking about here. Where you have seen where whatever Sony touches, they don't have the best intention. Where Crunchyroll, it does have a bad reputation, more so than ever before. I might add, and the fact that it's being acquired by the same people, the fact that EGG firm is in this predicament that they feel that they have to be acquired by any Aniplex, it is a little concerning. The only saving grace I can at least say is that Mushoku Tensei is not necessarily owned by EGG firm, and what I mean by that, Studio Buying is the one that made Mushoku Tensei, and Mushoku Tensei is made by two companies. Like it's a joint venture, X Firm and White Fox. So I don't necessarily think that any Polek would get D'd because there are two separate companies. I don't really know how that would work. But since they haven't acquired White Fox, I do think these anime are safe. Like I do think so. But hopefully I'm right on that, and hopefully this won't be a detriment to the studio as a whole. But regardless, let me know your thoughts on the comment section below. I'll see you guys on the next time.